entitled parents gave me prenup ultimatum, so I replaced them. The phone call that would destroy my relationship with my parents forever came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, exactly 3 weeks before my wedding to Marcus. Sarah, we need to talk. My mother's voice was ice cold through the speaker. Your father and I have made a decision about this marriage of yours. I was lying in bed next to Marcus, scrolling through wedding RSVPs on my laptop. At 28, I thought I was finally getting the fairy tale, marrying my college sweetheart, planning our dream wedding, starting our lives together in the beautiful house we just bought in Portland. Marcus stirred beside me as I sat up, suddenly wide awake. Mom, it's almost midnight. Can't this wait until tomorrow? No, it cannot wait. Her tone made my stomach drop. We're flying out there Thursday morning. We need to discuss the prenuptial agreement. What prenuptial agreement? Marcus and I already decided we don't want one. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then my father's voice came on the line. They had me on speaker. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, he said, using my full hyphenated name like I was 12 years old again. You will sign a prenuptial agreement, or your mother and I will not be attending your wedding. Furthermore, we will be cutting off all financial support, removing you from our will, and severing contact with you permanently. My hands started shaking. Dad, what are you talking about? Why would you? That boy comes from nothing, my mother interrupted. His family has no money, no connections, no prospects. You're inheriting a multi-million-dollar business empire, Sarah. We will not watch you throw it all away on some romantic nonsense. Marcus was fully awake now, sitting up and looking concerned. I put the phone on speaker so he could hear. Marcus isn't some boy, Mom. He's a software engineer. He makes 6 figures. We've been together for 8 years. $120,000, my father scoffed. Sarah, do you understand that's what I spend on wine in a year? You're set to inherit Morrison Industries when your mother and I retire. We're worth $47 million. This prenup isn't negotiable. My parents, David Morrison and Linda Morrison, had built their logistics company from nothing when they were in their 20s. Now, at 55 and 53 respectively, they controlled a shipping empire that spanned the entire West Coast. Growing up, I'd been groomed to take over the business someday. MBA from Stanford, 5 years working my way up through different departments, learning every aspect of the operation. But I'd also been with Marcus since we were both sophomores at Oregon State. He'd proposed last year on the anniversary of our first date, at the same little cafe where we'd met. Our relationship had nothing to do with money and everything to do with the fact that he made me laugh until my sides hurt, remembered my coffee order after 8 years, and still looked at me like I was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. You're really going to boycott my wedding over this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We're going to protect you from making the biggest mistake of your life, my mother said. The prenup we had drawn up ensures that Marcus cannot touch your inheritance, the family business, or any assets you bring into the marriage. It's standard procedure for people in our position. But we've never talked about this. You can't just spring this on me 3 weeks before the wedding. We've been hoping you'd come to your senses, my father said. We thought this Marcus phase would run its course. But since you're determined to go through with this, we're implementing damage control. Marcus gently took the phone from my hands. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, this is Marcus. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not after Sarah's money. I love her, and I just want to build a life with her. My mother's laugh was bitter. Oh, how convenient. The poor boy claims he doesn't want the fortune. Tell me, Marcus, if you're not interested in Sarah's inheritance, you shouldn't have any problem signing an agreement that says you can't touch it, right? Marcus looked at me, clearly out of his depth. I mean, if that's what you think is best, I guess I wouldn't object to. No. The word came out of my mouth like a gunshot. Absolutely not. Marcus, don't you dare agree to this. Sarah, be reasonable, my father said. If he truly loves you, a prenup shouldn't matter to him. And if you truly loved me, you wouldn't be threatening to disown me over this. I was shouting now, tears streaming down my face. This isn't about protecting me, this is about controlling me. We'll be there Thursday, my mother said coolly. You have until Saturday to decide. Sign the prenup, or lose your family forever. Those are your options. They hung up. Marcus wrapped his arms around me as I sobbed. Hey, it's okay. We'll figure this out. Maybe we should just sign it. I don't care about your inheritance anyway. That's not the point, I said through my tears. They're basically calling you a gold digger and threatening to disown me if I don't agree that you are one. How is that okay? The next 2 days were torture. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept going over the conversation in my head, trying to understand how my parents had become these cold, calculating strangers. Sure, they'd always been focused on money and success, but they'd also raised me to be independent and make my own decisions. This felt like a complete betrayal of everything they'd taught me. Thursday afternoon, my parents arrived in Portland. They'd booked themselves into the Nines, downtown's most expensive hotel, and demanded I meet them for dinner at 7 p.m. No Marcus allowed. I showed up at Le Pigeon wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, knowing it would irritate my mother. She was dressed in a Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's rent, her black hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless despite the 3-hour flight. My father wore his usual armor of an expensive Italian suit and Rolex. You look terrible, my mother said by way of greeting. Have you been eating? Hard to work up an appetite when your parents are threatening to disown you, I shot back. My father slid a thick manila envelope across the table. The prenuptial agreement. Our lawyers have reviewed it thoroughly. It's ironclad. I opened it and started reading. The document was 28 pages long and written in dense legal language, but the gist was clear. Marcus would have no claim to any money I'd inherited or might inherit in the future, no ownership stake in Morrison Industries, and no right to any assets I brought into the marriage. If we divorced, he'd leave with exactly what he brought in, essentially nothing, from my parents' perspective. But there was more. Buried in the fine print were clauses about where we could live, not more than a 2-hour drive from my parents, how many children we'd have, at least 2, to continue the family line, and even restrictions on what Marcus could do for work, nothing that would compete with Morrison Industries' interests. This isn't a prenup, I said, looking up at them. This is a contract for me to live my entire life according to your specifications. It's protection, my mother said firmly. Protection for you, protection for the family legacy, protection for everything your father and I have worked to build. What about protection for my right to make my own choices? You can make whatever choices you want, my father said. As long as you're willing to live with the consequences. The waiter came over to take our order, but I stood up instead. I need some time to think about this. Sarah, sit down, my mother commanded. We're not finished discussing this. Yes, we are. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them sitting there with their prenup and their ultimatums. That night, I called my best friend Jessica, who'd been my maid of honor and had known my parents almost as long as I had. They're really going to cut you off over this? She asked, incredulous. Sarah, I've known your mom since we were in high school. She used to brag about how independent and strong-willed you were. Apparently that was only cute when I was a kid, I said bitterly. Now that I'm an adult making real decisions, they want total control. What does Marcus think? He keeps saying he'll sign whatever they want. But Jess, you should see this thing. It's not just about money, they want to control every aspect of our lives. Where we live, how many kids we have, what Marcus does for work. It's insane. So what are you going to do? I was quiet for a long moment. I think I'm going to call their bluff. Sarah. No, listen. They're betting that I love money and comfort more than I love Marcus and my independence. They think they can bully me into compliance because they've always been able to before. But I'm not 12 anymore, and I'm not dependent on them. But you're talking about walking away from millions of dollars. And losing your parents. Am I really losing my parents, though? Because the people who called me Tuesday night aren't the parents who raised me. I don't know who they are. Friday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching. I wanted to understand exactly what I'd be walking away from if I refused to sign the prenup. Morrison Industries was indeed worth about $47 million. As the only child, I stood to inherit the entire company when my parents retired, which they'd been planning to do in the next 5 years. They'd already started transitioning some responsibilities to me, and I had a clear path to becoming CEO. But I also discovered some things that surprised me. The company had been struggling more than my parents had let on. 2 major clients had jumped ship to competitors in the past year, and profit margins were shrinking. The logistics industry was changing rapidly, with new technology and automation threatening traditional shipping companies. More importantly, I realized that taking over Morrison Industries would mean spending my entire life working in a business I'd never actually chosen. I just followed the path my parents had laid out for me, never questioning whether it was what I really wanted. I'd always been good at the work, but did I love it? Did I wake up excited to optimize shipping routes and negotiate contracts with trucking companies? Or had I just been going through the motions because it was expected of me? That afternoon, I did something else I'd never done. I called Marcus's parents. Tom and Patricia Williams lived in Salem, about an hour south of Portland. Tom was a retired high school teacher, Patricia worked part-time at a local library. They lived in a modest 3-bedroom house they bought 30 years ago and had raised 3 kids on a combined income that was probably less than what my parents spent on vacations. But when I called Patricia and asked if I could come talk to them, she immediately said yes. When I drove down that evening, Tom had made his famous chili and Patricia had baked fresh cornbread. Their house smelled like home in a way my parents' mansion never had. Marcus told us about the situation, Patricia said gently as we sat around their kitchen table. We're so sorry you're going through this, honey. I keep trying to understand their perspective, I said. I mean, I get that they want to protect their money. But this feels like so much more than that. Tom leaned forward. Can I tell you something? When Marcus first started talking about you, back in college, we were worried. I looked up, surprised. Not about you personally, Patricia quickly clarified. But we knew your family had money, and Marcus had always been, well, he'd never been the most confident kid. We were afraid he might get in over his head, or that you might see him as some kind of project. But you know what convinced us that wasn't the case? Tom continued. The way Marcus talked about you. He never mentioned your family's money, never talked about fancy restaurants or expensive gifts. He talked about how you made him laugh, how you stayed up all night helping him study for his programming exams, how you remembered his mom's birthday and sent flowers. Patricia nodded. And when we met you, we could see that you looked at him the same way. Like he was the most important person in the world. Not like he was lucky to be with you, or like you were doing him some kind of favor. Your parents don't see that, Tom said sadly. All they see are dollar signs and social status. They're so focused on protecting their wealth that they can't see their daughter's happiness. I started crying again, and Patricia got up to hug me. Sweetheart, what do you want to do? I want to marry Marcus, I said through my tears. I want to build a life with him based on love and respect and partnership. I want to make my own choices about my career and where I live and how many kids I have. I want to be with people who love me for who I am, not what I'm worth on paper. Then that's what you should do, Tom said simply. The rest will work itself out. Saturday morning, decision day. My parents had demanded I meet them at their hotel at 10 a.m. to give them my answer. I showed up right on time, with Marcus beside me and a folder in my hands. Have you signed the prenup? My mother asked before I'd even sat down. No, I said. I haven't. And I'm not going to. My father's face went red. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away your entire future for some romantic fantasy. Actually, I'm not throwing away my future. I'm choosing it. I opened my folder and pulled out several documents. I spent yesterday doing some research and making some phone calls. I slid the first document across the table. This is my resignation letter from Morrison Industries. Effective immediately. My mother's face went white. Sarah, you can't be serious. This, I continued, sliding over the second document, is the paperwork to start my own consulting company. It turns out there's a pretty big market for logistics consultants who understand both the traditional shipping industry and new technology solutions. The third document was a bank statement. And this is my savings account. Marcus and I have been living on his salary and saving mine for the past 2 years. We have enough to live on while I get my business off the ground. My parents stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I've also had some interesting conversations, I continued. Tom Chen, no relation to Mom, but funny coincidence, runs a mid-sized shipping company out of Seattle. He's been looking for someone to help modernize his operations. We talked for 2 hours yesterday about a potential contract. You contacted our competitors, my father sputtered. I contacted potential clients, I corrected. I'm not taking any proprietary information from Chin Morrison Industries. I'm just using the skills and knowledge you spent years teaching me. Sarah, stop this nonsense right now, my mother said, her voice shaking. You're upset, you're not thinking clearly. Take the weekend, calm down, Anne. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, I interrupted. Do you want to know what I realized? I've been living my entire life according to your plan. College major, career path, even the neighborhood where Marcus and I bought our house, it was all designed to keep me close and keep me under your control. I stood up and looked down at them. But here's the thing, I'm not your employee, and I'm not your investment. I'm your daughter. And if you can't love me enough to let me make my own choices, then maybe Tom and Patricia Williams were right. Right about what? My father demanded. I asked them yesterday if they'd be willing to walk me down the aisle, since my own parents apparently won't be attending my wedding. The silence in the hotel room was deafening. My mother's perfectly composed mask finally cracked, and I saw something that might have been genuine hurt flash across her face. You're replacing us, she whispered. With Marcus's parents. I'm not replacing you, I said softly. You're replacing yourselves. You're choosing money over your daughter. I'm just making sure someone who actually loves me is there on the most important day of my life. I gathered up my papers and took Marcus's hand. The wedding is still next Saturday at 3 p.m., same location. If you change your minds, you're welcome to come. But I won't be signing that prenup, and I won't be coming back to work for you. We walked toward the door, but my father's voice stopped me. Sarah, if you walk out that door, there's no coming back. We meant what we said. No inheritance, no family money, no relationship with us. You'll be on your own. I turned back to look at them one last time. I've been on my own for years.